Riley, it's so great to connect today. Thanks for coming on the podcast.
Oh, thank you so much. I know we have a lot of crossover. You've been obviously an amazing athlete at Snow College and at BYU, and I'm a little bit older than you, but I loved following your success and following some of the great things that you've done, including, some of your graduate school work and some of the really interesting things that you're doing now on your podcast. It's pretty incredible to see all the work that you're putting in.
I mean, we could talk literally for days about all of the different people we know and the places we've crossed over, though this is the first time we've actually even met virtually, let alone in person, which is kind of wild given all of our crossover. And speaking of that crossover, so you work with teams, you help their mental skills, you train them on mental skills. This, of course, is quite interesting to me because my PhD is in organizational behavior, which is basically social psychology. You're doing sports psychology. You've worked with lots of different teams and organizations. And as you think back on the things that you're teaching and the lessons you've learned, what lessons would you most want to pass on to others?
Well, I think first of all, it's a great question. There's a lot of different things that happen in the sports psychology world, and as a consultant to NFL athletes, PGA Tour athletes, college athletes, these are all really, really high elite people. I think the one thing that we come back to all the time is really one of two things. One is the ability to be present and to stay in the moment, or number two, being able to take things one rep at a time, one practice at a time, one game at a time. And that sounds really, really simplified, and that sounds really, really like easy. It's a little bit harder to do than it is to actually execute. And one of the things that we end up talking about a lot is, when you're in the present moment, if you can be where your feet are, right? That's where peace, calm, kind of like contentedness. That's where a lot of really really good things happen, and a lot of us fly into the past with woulda, coulda, shouldas. So that's a really really easy way to check if you're flying into the past. Is there's some woulda, coulda, shouldas going on, and that leads to frustration, that leads to anger, that leads to regret and some unsettled feelings. And then there's a lot of us that fly into the future, and that is typically you can recognize that you've flown into the future with a what if question. What if my coach doesn't like me? What if my professor doesn't like me? What if my wife doesn't like this? What if it doesn't go right? What if I drop the ball? What if my business goes under? There's a lot of ways to fly into the future with things that haven't happened yet. So coming into just being present is really really important, and I think there's two ways that I think are really powerful to just get into that moment. One is a simple grounding technique that I just call 3-2-1. And if you think about this, of just thinking of three things you can see, two things you can hear, followed by one thing that you can feel, and then follow that with a deep diaphragmatic breath. That can give you a timeout for about 40 seconds and help you to reset and recalibrate your mind and really get into the moment. And then also asking yourself the question, what's important now? And it's just a simple formula of WIN. And when you ask yourself the question, what's important now? That question always brings you into the present moment. And I really like that. I have pro golfers that are using it. I have pro skiers that are using it. In fact, the Northwestern football team a few years ago, when they went to the Rose Bowl, they put it on their chin straps so that every time that they like put their chin strap on or they laced up their chin strap, that they were thinking to themselves, what's important now? And that's just a really, really good way to get focused on the moment. And it's where all the hay is made. It's in the present moment. We can't, no amount of anxiety and fear can take care of the future, and no amount of guilt and regret can take care of the past. The key is to be just right here in the moment. And I think that's a huge component of what we end up working on. And then obviously there's a lot of self-talk tools and a lot of different things that happen with athletes that are important when it comes to self-talk.
Okay, so I love frameworks, and I'm like a framework. I like try to collect frameworks and try to use them and teach them. And uh, I've never heard these frameworks and this idea that okay, if I'm thinking about woulda, coulda, shoulda, I'm in the past. Like that's an obvious. It's an obvious tell. If I'm worried about what if I strike out? What if I fail the test? What if I don't get the job? Now I'm in the future.
Right.
And so I love that way to tell where am I at? And then you've got the technique for how to get us into the present, the 3, 2, 1, and the win. Such great frameworks.
I think they're simple. The idea in mental toughness or in, trying to help people with the mental game is not to complicate things and not to be like, no, wait, what did that old man Riley tell me I was supposed to do? It's more about, okay, what do I do when this happens? I've got a quick reference and I've got a quick tool that I can get into the moment. And in sports psychology and you mentioned offline a friend of mine named Justin Sua and Craig Manning. These guys are amazing sports psychology consultants and mental performance coaches, but amongst some of our peers, we joke around that when you get a case of the shoulds, you're just shooting all over yourself, right? And it's not a good idea to should on yourself because there's just so much expectation that comes with that and so much weight that can come with the word should that's a little bit difficult and can be trying. And when we can free ourselves from the past and the future and just really focus on what is the process that I can do today that will be helpful. And I accidentally, Nate, not to tell too many stories, but my daughter was born at 25 weeks in 2012, and this was before I was in sports psychology, right? And about 60 days into the NICU, we'd gone through so many things like tests for brain bleeds. She had sticky lungs. She had some things with her heart, and it was a very stressful time. And I'm not telling this story to stress everyone out. Like Alexis is doing great and she's thriving and she's growing. But about 60 days, my wife, with a woman's intuition, just knew that something was wrong with her. And we didn't know what it was, but her face was kind of blue. And I couldn't handle it. I had to hold her up in the isolette. They had to give her a shot right in the back, spinal tap. There was all these different things, and I was just exhausted after 60 days. Like I had really just worn myself out. I I stopped by my mom's house. I had to drop by my mom's house to drop something off on the way home, and she goes, "What's the matter, Riley?" Like her mom does. They know what's wrong, and I'm like, "I'm just exhausted, Mom. I just don't think I can do another 60 days. I don't think I can do another 60 days in the NICU. This is so hard." And she gave maybe one of the best sports psychology lessons that I've ever heard. She goes, "Can you make it through tomorrow? Can you just do tomorrow? Can you do me a favor and not think about 60 days and just think about taking care of tomorrow?" And I think about that all the time. I shared that story in my book, and I think it's a real clue or a real tell as to how greatness is achieved. It's one day at a time, it's one rep at a time, and it's one moment at a time. And if you can make it through today, great. If you can't make it through today, make it till lunch. And if you can't make it till lunch, just make it through the next 10 minutes. And that can be incredibly empowering to your performance, to your happiness, and to your well-being.
This reminds me a little bit of a conversation I had years ago with Kellen Moore. Kellen Moore, now head coach of the New Orleans Saints after winning the championship with Philadelphia Eagles or winning the Super Bowl last year with the Philadelphia Eagles as the offensive coordinator. And one of the things that he tries to teach his players is just come back to zero. Uh, I mean, it sounds a lot like the grounding technique. Be present, worry about the things you can control. And as you shared the lessons about um, being present and then taking things one rep at a time. I thought they were two different lessons, and they are, but they're, as I hear you share that story, they're actually more related than I first realized. Being present and then because if you're not present, you're thinking about the future, you're thinking about tomorrow, you're thinking 60 days ahead. But when you're present, it's easy to focus on just taking one rep at a time, one day at a time.
All you can do.
Sorry, what'd you say?
That's all you can do. In
Yeah.
the moment, that's all you can do is take care of the process because the game's going to take care of itself. The future's going to take care of itself. The past has already happened. And so all you can do is be process oriented in that moment. And that becomes really, really powerful and really leads to high performance in these wonderful stories of athletes and businessmen and different people all around the world that have been successful.
Okay, so here's a question that just came to me. This morning I watched an interview with Dan Hurley. Dan Hurley is the head basketball coach at UConn, won the last two national championships, and just a fireball, lightning rod. Comes from one of the most successful basketball families. His dad was an amazing coach. His brother won national championships at Duke. And Dan was talking about how when he was younger, he played at Seton Hall, but his career kind of derailed, partially because he wasn't hitting the expectations he had for himself, and he felt like he wasn't living up to the family name. And he still, if he sees a picture of him or a video of him at Seton Hall, he gets sick, he gets frustrated. But it seems like he's using that to drive him. So what's the balance between like using our past failures to drive us and motivate us while not letting it ruin the present?
So I would say this about being present, and this is something that I talk about with businesses and individual athletes is yes, it's very important to be present. It's okay to take about 5% of the time and spend it in the past and about 5% of the time in the future. And I compare it to a drive down the canyon here in Utah, right? If you're driving down the canyon road, 90% of the time you're going to have your eyes on the road. But when it gets safe and when you can look out into the future and think about possibilities and think about your big goals, then do it, right? And then when you're going around a corner or when you're in traffic, it's important to check the rearview mirror and learn whatever lessons that you need to learn. And sometimes the past can be really good. It can give you nostalgia. It can remind you that you can do it, right? And sometimes the future is good because you're on track to where you're going. It's when we ruminate in either one of those directions that it becomes damaging to us. So I would say yeah, you can learn from past lessons. I mean, look, I coach young quarterbacks here in the state of Utah. I have fun like coaching the quarterback position. I sometimes see old videos of myself and I'm like, oh, the footwork, dude, the
Yeah.
footwork is so bad, right? But I was on my own path. And if we can release and we can let go of some of the mistakes that we made and just say, hey, that was part of my path to get to me to where I am now, then we usually can really rely on the moment. And I think Coach Hurley's going through a lot of different emotions right now. I mean,
Yeah, I think so.
he's a pretty fiery guy, and I think he does care about his players, but there are some times where I'm like, ooh, that was pretty emotional. He's probably gonna have to work on that one and remember that moment.
Yeah, definitely an interesting example, certainly an outlier in, I mean, in terms of intensity. So anyway, I really appreciate your answer to that question. A great metaphor about coming down the canyon. Well, any final things you'd like to share as we wrap up here, Riley?
So there's a huge portion of sports psychology that I think can be stolen from the world of stoicism. And I got this from one of my offensive coordinators down at Snow College. His name was Mike Canales before he went on to coach at North Carolina State and the Jets, and he's still a coach now. But this is my favorite phrase as far as stoicism goes, and I think this helps athletes and young businessmen and entrepreneurs all over the world. It's never as bad as it seems, and it's never as good as it gets. It's never as bad as it seems, and it's never as good as it gets. And I think that's just a huge way, just a great way to frame life, to frame wins and losses, and to realize that it's probably not as bad as you feel like it is, and it's probably not as good as you think it is. And what that does is that just keeps us in the moment and keeps us working and keeps us using the process to our advantage. And I just love that. I love that phrase, and I love that thought maybe to leave with your listeners and viewers.
One of the very first episodes I recorded back when I was just exclusively doing monologues was on stoicism. And I love that phrase. I've never heard that phrase specifically. Of course, the idea is packaged in lots of different ways, but I love that phrase. And the thing I love about your work, Riley, and the lessons you shared is these lessons are excellent for sports. Obviously, top athletes all over the world are using these lessons, but they, of course, apply just to our regular everyday life, work, family, friends, you name it. These lessons apply. So great stuff. Really glad we could connect today, and thanks for sharing such great lessons.
So much thanks for your time, and I look forward to following you in the future. doing a great job with your podcast and just a great job with your everyday work. So thank you so much for this opportunity.